Cyberpunk 2077. Oh boy, how much have we all been waiting for this game to come out? Finally, after so many delays, after so many postponements, it was out in December 2020, right before Christmas. As usually happens for Christmas, sometimes you get a great gift, sometimes you get just a pile of coal, in the best case. Today, I am talking about this beautiful masterpiece by CD Projekt Red, our beloved Polish game developer, who stand behind such games as Witcher, Witcher 2, Witcher 3, Witcher Gwent, and of course, Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
The expectations, the hype that was around the game was so high. There is no game that could have been better than Cyberpunk 2077, as we were looking at all the trailers and pre-game modes and pre-game stuff and the way of variability and the way that all your choices would create so many different life passes and different stories that every single action matters of what you did in the game. Well, all these promises could just go to the trash can, just because CD Projekt Red definitely under-delivered. I think people generally like to be extreme in their feelings, when they were so much rooting and taking every little bit of information about the new game being out. People were getting so excited and were posting and talking about it so much. I also got really hooked up on the idea just getting the Cyberpunk 2077, and I pre-ordered it, and of course it didn't go well for me either. My pre-order was delivered to me only 1 month after the game was officially out because of some mess up with the delivery company. Probably that was for the better. I haven't seen the very first days of the game with all these glitches that has been happening. Just to preface this, I just really wanted to play in this kind of setting. I didn't have many expectations, and my knowledge about what there's gonna be in the game will be in the cyberpunk setting. There will be Keanu Reeves, and people seem to love it.
You're breathtaking. You're all breathtaking.
So that's as much as I knew before I started playing. So first, the game give you the choice of 3 life passes that will determine your destiny. This is the Corpo, the Street Kid, and Nomad. And guess what? It all doesn't matter. It's only for pretty much the introductory part. Is it even considered to be part 1 or chapter 1? Doesn't matter. So there is basically the beginning of the game where you create your character, and you create your character, but it's a first-person game. So as much as you can create yourself as cool as you want, you would only see yourself in the mirrors, and that's it. If that matters for anyone. So you chose your life path, and you're slowly progressing. So I personally first chose Street Kid because I saw this seemed to be like the most generic idea for now. I'll try to be Street Kid and I'll see what's gonna happen. So there is an intro that you need to go through a certain mission. You try to learn your sort of legend that you are coming back from Atlanta back to the Night City where you've been growing up. You're meeting your old gang members, the friends and stuff, and you're basically being tasked to steal a car called Irondite, which is kind of a reference to the Witcher series. And when you're trying to steal it, you're meeting your good old friend Jackie Wells, who's stopping you from doing this, and then you're getting caught by police. And then you're coming into the cutscene when you're just having fun with Jackie, and you're just dancing, stealing stuff, and that's something was legitimate for Street Kid, so I thought okay, that makes sense. So I basically finished the whole game as being a Street Kid. The first chapter when you need to go and steal this secret chip that been developed by Arasaka, and you go into the Arasaka Tower, this hotel, to the penthouse. when you become a witness of Yorinobu Arasaka killing the one and only Saburo Arasaka, who was the emperor of the whole Arasaka corporation, the biggest and the most infamous and powerful corporation in the world of Cyberpunk. And that's when the whole story begins, sort of. So you trying to escape from the towers, Jackie dies as you were escaping, and then you basically needed to put the chip inside of your own head, and then you learn that this biochip contains the whole personality of the famous and all-time terrorist Johnny Silverhand, played by one and only Keanu Reeves.
If I need your body, I'll fuck it.
So then your whole game then becomes you want to survive, you want to get rid of Johnny Silverhand, and this is your end goal, sort of say. Oh, you want to try to figure out your life. Of course, you either grow in a friendship with Johnny Silverhand, or... No, seriously. They messed up even this. There is no other way. You pretty much as you guys could be an assholes to each other, at the end of the day, you're becoming friends. Your decisions, your answers wouldn't really matter. There is always will be the option at the very end where you would have an ability to let Johnny finish the whole thing for yourself. So anyhow, I haven't finished all the side quests at the time when I already had about 30 hours into the game, and I decided to, okay, I'll see what will happen. Maybe I'll just do another life pass, and I'll just leave all the side quests I haven't completed for another playthrough. So I said like, okay, I'm just gonna finish the game now, I'm just gonna choose one of the options for the endings, and then I'll see how it's gonna go. After this, and I tried another life pass. I decided to try Corpo because it was tipped by a friend of mine who also completed the game that it was probably one of the most exciting life passes. I was like, okay, let's take a look. So indeed, the intros were different, depends on your life pass, so then you just try and you get into this, you complete some different mission, at the end of the day, it all ends with the same cutscenes of you and Jackie Wells, who is also your friend. Doesn't matter if you're Nomad, Corpo, or I mean, I haven't completed Nomad yet, so I'm not entirely sure, but I would imagine yes. You're just having fun together, literally the same cutscene, and then you're again appearing like on this very first mission, so nothing really changes. Like the only things that changes for you is that you have maybe different dialogue options which don't really matter too much. Like they are not decisive of anything. And this is crazy. Like, I understand why everybody were so outraged. Exactly at the same time I tried to do a second playthrough, and after I realized that doesn't really matter what I'm gonna choose, I mean, of course, after having the second playthrough, I was trying to do some different things in the quests, just to try out some different options and how it's gonna go. I also have been watching some other videos to learn that there were some ways to do some quests differently, something that is not obvious from the very beginning, but if you willing to try something else, you still can do this. For example, you could save Takemura during the siege when you're trying to talk with Hanuka, and then yeah, like it gives some ability for you to decide on your own whether than just the following, you know, so this is your task, you need to go and do this, which I sometimes try to do just in order to, you know, I'm here to kind of enjoy the story, so I'm trying to understand what the story is all about. I'm not necessarily as interested in like trying to observe all the possibilities and how can I break the game or do something different. It's kind of a tricky one. I understand that it's also super hard to program something like this, yet you like would love to have as much freedom as possible, so I totally get it why is it in such a way, and I totally get it why people may be nagging more about this, some will be more fine with it like I am, but yeah, I think again, another point in the Cyberpunk 2077 is that everybody were promised to have much more freedom than what you actually got. So, as I started to talk about the story, I do feel like the story was written nicely. However, it's felt super rushed in the end. Like, again, I tried to complete a lot of side quests, which weren't necessarily important. unless of course you want to do some romance, as I did with Panem at this case. There were some other options depending on your gender. You could also have romance with River Ward, with Judy Alvarez, I think with Kenny from the band, like this old famous rock star. So there are some options for the romance, of course, as well, and mainly your side missions would matter for these kind of things. Or, I mean, just a fun story, because some of the side missions were kind of cool, and they would add more flair to all the cyberpunk atmosphere, which was super nice. I mean, like, not enjoyed, it's not the right word, but it was kind of a cool quest where you were figuring out this maniac who's being kidnapping young boys, young men, and then trying to make some mutants out of them in his cow farm by injecting some weird stuff. Like, it was crazy, and then you were together with Real Ward, the detective of Night City Police Department, trying to figure out the case and trying to learn what has been happening. And there is this technique of brain dances when you're trying to get into the mind and sleeps of different people, their memories, and then you're trying to look for some clues there. I mean, it looked cool, but like, it kind of always tips you where you need to look for the clue, and I think it helps you as a player, but yeah, it would have been much more complex if you wouldn't have these tips and you would try to scan all the things around, something that you would deem kind of suspicious. That would be much cooler. And even though, like, it would be just no reaction, or you couldn't scan something or whatever, but like, it did feel like this brain dance was a bit excessive. Like, it was a cool technique to have, that you could scan somebody else's memories, right? Yet, it was a bit pointless, as you always will be tipped what you need to scan, which kind of made it all a bit boring. So the build-up for the main story, I think it was all going fine, and if you wouldn't do some side quests, you could complete the main quests, I don't know, maybe in like 12-15 hours, I would assume. Maybe just an over exaggeration, but it did feel like not the game itself not that long unless you complete all the quests. And the endings themselves, I do feel like the ending that I chosen was a bit disappointing. And I think the options that you'll be having is that you either let Johnny take your body, because even if you try to remove Johnny from your head, it will be possible that you most likely gonna die in a year from the point it happened, just because this biochip already degrades your brain too much. You could also just give it to Johnny, so Johnny will be living his life but in your body as a main character. And of course, so it gives you this dilemma that you need to figure out at the very end, and then after this you basically have the ending, and then the game puts you back to the start, where you having this meeting with Hanako Arasaka, where you decide sort of which ending you would have. Which I think is actually cool that they did it this way, so you still can continue playing the same playthrough instead of starting the thing all over again, and you kind of already know what was one ending, so you could complete all the endings in the same playthrough, which is cool. I mean, I think it is a good way to allow you as a player to see as much content as possible just in one game. But I think all the promises of customization, personification, different life passes mattering, I think what kind of felt a bit disappointed. I think as much as I learned after post-factum, after I started playing the game, that's I think where I also started to be a bit more disappointed with the game. Even though the main character is V, which is like as if I was playing for myself, you know, because I'm also V. So I really fell for him. The cloud around the game, the hype was too much, the expectations didn't deliver. The game itself, the mechanics and playthrough was fine. The aesthetics and philosophy, well, let's touch upon this as well. I think this is exactly the thing why everybody was so hyped is that the Cyberpunk has one of the coolest aesthetics out there for now, and like these whole neon lights and something I tried to do here, of course I would not be able. This is all the cool things. This is the thing that just look great, we all sort of enjoying, we like how all these colors that are quite artificial, and we see that this is all unnatural, yet it has such this dreamy and mystic view that we all kind of fall in for it, right? It also the time when there is even more freedom for everything, you know, it's even more exaggerated freedom that we may be experiencing right now, even though I know, of course, let's not go into the politics, our freedoms are being oppressed in this or that way from time to time. So I get it. Cyberpunk is one of the options of how our future could be, and I think we touched upon with a friend of mine in the podcast about how the future could become, what the outcome is going to be, and Cyberpunk is definitely one of the options of us all getting prosthetics, of us getting some Neuralinks, some brain interfaces and all the great things, and will become a post-humans, which will potentially bring us to a happier life, or it could become this dystopian cyberpunk situation that is happening where corporations are pretty much the evil, and there are people who are trying to resist and live their life. Then the philosophy and the ideas, like, here's the thing. At some points, the game is taking itself too seriously. There has been a lot of references to the classic philosophies. When you're going through the missions, the very beginning was the T-Bug, who is the netrunner, basically part of your crew when you're trying to steal this biochip at the very beginning. She's always like to quote some philosophers like Marcus Aurelius or Aristotle. And sometimes game kind of makes jokes, like Jackie Wells, for example, who is not really into this philosopher sphere. He sometimes was making a joke about it to T-Bug, but sometimes it felt like it was partially deliberate, so it's not there to have a joke about it, to laugh about it, but more like that the game was kind of treating itself in this way. And of course we have this dilemma and dualization of the person when there is V, the main character, in his mind, and there is Johnny Silverhand, and there are two characters trying to live within one person, and of course we can talk about the important problems of us either living with our childhood traumas and problems versus us becoming an adults and prospering somewhere up, or perhaps we have some other two identities with some kind of a schizophrenia living within one body, which allows us to think and dream about philosophical things, whether something like this is appropriate in the world, and whether these two identities actually one will prevail or not, or will they together happily live in peace, building their relationship that is benefiting for the human being. Sometimes it feels like game talks to you in this kind of tone, but when you see in some other things that definitely undermine this whole message, it kind of feels a bit cringy, just in the way that this whole philosophy game is trying to be in there. I both liked and disliked it. Sometimes it was appropriate, sometimes it wasn't. Basically, I actually like the moment when you have this mission, you need to investigate what happened to Evelyn Parker, the person who gave you the tasks for getting this biochip in the first place. And then you go into the clouds, the place where she's been working as a doll, and dolls are like sort of prostitutes but in a different way, so they are there to more like give you whatever you want. And I think it's in this specific way, it was more like also, I don't know, giving some psychiatrist advice? I don't know. So basically, when you're stepping into the room to sort of interview one of the dolls to learn more about what happened to Evelyn Parker, you're talking to this doll who is like there to fulfill your desires, and yet she's talking about kind of a meaning on life questions. That's what she's asking you, and that's what you're trying to answer. And that was actually such a moment when they got me. They got me. I started to think of it myself and started to think about, okay, so how can I answer this for myself even? Because this wasn't really some game related question, but more of a philosophical one. And I mean, sometimes if you are in the mood for this is great that you can ask these questions to yourself while playing this game. This is exactly what I kind of liked about Cyberpunk overall. Because I know some people were kind of a bit hating them for this kind of aspect, and I understand. Yeah, sometimes it could be a bit not part of the what is happening around in Cyberpunk, and especially if you're seeing that your character just stuck in the wall, and after this you're having the conversation about the philosophy and the meaning of life, and where you're hearing from Vic Vector, the guy who is like your Ripper dog, that you are certified bug free, and that was one of the funny memes about the game. That the game as if the game was kind of making a joke of itself, which was kind of a cool thing, kind of a cool feature overall. But yeah, like, they tried to bring up these questions. They didn't really properly develop them, which some people called as a disadvantage, while I would still think of it as well, it's great that there are games out here that are trying not to be just fun way of entertainment, but also those who are trying to help you think about some issues like this, about some things like that, about the meanings of your life and how would you be chasing your dreams and all the other things. And you came here to, of course, entertain yourself and play a fun game, but when it also gives you some food for thought, this is what I like. Especially seeing that there is still so many people who are so skeptical about games and about them as a good way of entertainment. Because people who don't really play games, they would always assume that the game is some kind of a Fortnite situation. And yeah, of course, these kind of games are super popular. There are still a lot of people who are playing role-playing games when there is a great story, where there is a lot of things to think about, where there is a lot of things to learn. There is, of course, some more arcade-based games, like I just mentioned, the Fortnite or a Call of Duty, where you go and shoot. You sort of maybe learning some strategy and maybe some cooperation with some other people. I understand people love it for the joy of having fun, but there are a lot of games which I personally enjoy where there is a story to tell. And those sometimes could be really, really well thought stories, better than most of the movies that are coming out these days. That is why I'm a huge proponent for the gaming. So one would probably want some kind of a conclusion for me after all the things that I said. It's hard. Let's be honest. CD Projekt Red is not definitely the biggest game developer / publisher. They, of course, were having a huge success, which Witcher 3 was, and that they tried to build on. And Cyberpunk, even though they announced it around the time when Witcher 3 was supposed to be out, Witcher 3 was really their first big international success for them. So of course, after they noticed that it's been so wildly popular, they had to do something about it. So I think the Cyberpunk 2077 were first announced at the time when the second Witcher was out, that they already were supposed to plan or start to develop things. However, according to some news, they haven't really started developing until 2016, because still a lot of people were just involved in keeping Witcher 3 at a great level, because that was the money cow for the whole company, and that's how they could still sustain themselves. And CD Projekt Red, maybe they didn't have the best work conditions. Like, there has been a lot of rumors that people were extremely exhausted and burnt out from working in the company and from working on this specific project. And of course, we all feel super empathic towards the developers who put a lot of passion and thought into creating this game product, and of course, marketing did their job as well. They had to ensure that the game would sell, and of course, they made all what it took to make it happen. And there were some more investors into after Think, I suppose, who came after The Witcher 3, who were believing in the company and who were believing that the Cyberpunk would be a bigger success. Yet, after all these bugs and Sony calling out the game from the PS Store in the first, I think, weeks of it being out, just because on the PS4 it couldn't work completely, and I think Microsoft may have done something similar, but I'm not entirely sure. I honestly played it on my Xbox One, and I didn't feel any huge glitches which made it all impossible to play. And here is the thing. It feels like, yes, the hype was built enormous. The expectations were over the roof. However, we should also understand that memes should also not taken seriously, because it felt to me that people just tried to build even further on the bugs and glitches that were in the game to make it look even worse. And of course they made a bunch of quick fixes for the game in the first weeks when it was out. So I probably only I was already 1 month late after the release when I actually got to play the game. The experience didn't feel that bad at all. So I don't think it was a good game. It's still a good game. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed a bunch of side quests. I think I like the main story. And yeah, it was probably the game I would still continue playing. I still have some quests that I should finish, and it's still quite exciting and interesting to play it every now and then. Especially can't wait for all the DLCs being out, if they're gonna be out. And like, I don't mind experiencing some little minor bugs, and it doesn't bug me, if you know what I mean. However, I understand. People are good to be enraged of what has happened. Now, with the source code for the game being out, perhaps the modders will be able to fix the game way faster than CD Projekt Red could. This is it. That has been my long-ass rant about Cyberpunk 2077. I hope you liked it. I will be so curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And yeah, if you agree or disagree, just let me know. I'm really eager to have a discussion about it. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.